former President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane, will hear his fate today. Judgment will be handed down in the Randburg Magistrates Court shortly. Zuma pleaded not guilty to a charge of culpable homicide and another of reckless and negligent driving following a car crash in 2014 in which Zimbabwean Phumzile Dube was killed when Zuma's Porsche hit the taxi that she was in. SABC reporter Chriselda Lewis is in Randburg to give us an update this morning. Chriselda, D-Day, Judgment Day coming through. Talk to us about expectations.
Well, that's right, Leanne. It is D-Day for former President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane, at 9 o'clock this morning. The acting chief magistrate, Porsche, will hand down judgment in his culpable homicide and reckless driving case. And of course, you would know that before we got to this point, Leanne, before the trial itself had begun, the former president's son had brought an application to have the charges against him squashed, and he was unsuccessful in that bid. And this court found that the state witnesses who would then give evidence, this court cannot look the other way in the evidence that they would be able to give this court. So the trial then went ahead. You'd recall that Duduzane Zuma has long maintained that on that day, rainy conditions had led to his vehicle hitting a puddle of water and then aquaplaning and then subsequently causing the accident. That is what he has been maintaining. And the state basically saying that Duduzane Zuma should have foreseen, due to rainy conditions on that day, that he would have caused that accident. So certainly after the collation of all of those testimonies, you'd recall as well that once the trial had also begun, that's when the details of what happened shortly after the accident came to light. You'd recall that one of the survivors of the accident had indicated how Phumzile's lifeless body, Phumzile Dube, that is, had been hanging outside one of the windows of the taxi in which she was traveling, and giving us an indication of the impact of this accident. While Phumzile Dube's family has not said much there, Leanne, Duduzane Zuma has also remained silent until this point. It remains to be seen if he will talk to the media shortly after that judgment here today. What also remains to be seen, you recall that a constant figure at his side had been the former president, his father, who had been at his side supporting him throughout this trial. It remains to be seen if he will be here today to support his son on the final day and what he will have to say about it. You recall that Zuma Sr. has had a lot to say about him suspecting why that this case had, the charges had been reinstated against his son. You would recall, I did indicate in the earlier package you've been running on the program that the National Prosecuting Authority initially did not want to prosecute in this matter. It then made an about turn after the lobby group AfriForum said that they were going to privately prosecute. And then since then, it has then now come to trial. After 5 years now, the Dube family says it will finally get justice, and it certainly remains to be seen what the acting chief magistrate, Porsche, will say at 9 o'clock this morning. But the Dube family somewhat expecting some kind of closure in this matter 5 years after that accident occurred in 2014.
So 9 o'clock expecting. I know that all along his father, former President Jacob Zuma, has been by his side. No doubt he will be there as well today. And in fact, he's got a big week coming next week as well, appearing before the Zondo Commission.
Well, that's right, Leanne. That's why it's quite a catch-22 situation here this morning. All along, the former president had been supporting his son side by side, sitting right next to him in the gallery before he takes the stand. And I think precisely for that reason, we're speculating this morning whether indeed the former president will come on the final day, because obviously the expectation would be that the media that is all camped outside here today to report on this matter would certainly want to have the opportunity to ask the former president about how he feels about taking to the stand in the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into state capture from Monday to Friday next week. So whether he will give us an audience today certainly remains to be seen. But one would speculate that on the final day, certainly he would want to support his son. But the media themselves, of course, waiting to see if we could have a word with the former president as well about the big week that's coming up for him in that Commission of Inquiry into state capture in Parktown here in Johannesburg from Monday to Friday next week.
Yeah. Just, I think just one final question. I mean, what is the talk? It's very difficult to predict in terms of where Duduzane Zuma stands and where his fate lies. But, you know, there's always a little bit of mutterings and people talking behind the scenes as to, you know, what one can expect in this judgment. Are there any expectations?
Well, Leanne, I really don't want to turn into an analyst in this particular instance, but I mean, if we look at the evidence that has been brought before this court, from some of the analysts that I have spoken to, there certainly seem to have been some inconsistencies in the testimonies that were given regarding whether Duduzane Zuma was speeding or not on the day that the accident occurred, and exactly how much rain there was. You'd recall that one of the state witnesses had testified that they could not tell whether at the spot where the accident had occurred, yes, it was a rainy day, but on that particular spot, how much rainfall there was on that day. There isn't really any mechanism to tell exactly how much rainfall there was at that particular time and on that particular day. So some of the witnesses saying that all they heard was a bang. Still some questions at this stage about whether Duduzane Zuma was speeding or not. So I really don't want to be an analyst in this matter, certainly, Leanne, but the acting chief magistrate, Tebogo would need to take into account all of that evidence, collate all of that evidence, and certainly come to a decision at 9 o'clock in the interest of justice, depending, of course, on how strong the state's case was. And, of course, certainly what we're also expecting to see, you'd recall during the course of this trial, Leanne, and prior to it, Duduzane Zuma had quite a lot of support outside here by, for example, Black First, Land First, who had long said that the trial against him was nothing but a ploy to target his father, the former President Jacob Zuma, believing that this trial was politically motivated. And those are the sentiments that the former president had shared to me when I interviewed him here at the Randburg Magistrates Court during one of those court appearances. So I'm expecting quite a lot of reaction. It does not matter what the verdict is here today, but there will certainly be a lot of reaction. But again, it won't be the last time that you'll be hearing from Duduzane Zuma, while his father will be going to the Commission of Inquiry into state capture from Monday to Friday next week. It remains to be seen at what date he will also go and answer to allegations of state capture in Johannesburg here in Parktown, because he too will also be going before that commission. So a lot of reaction we're expecting, Leanne, following the delivery of that judgment here today.
Chriselda Lewis, very busy time for the Zuma family. Thank you very, very much. We wait to hear that judgment starting from 9 o'clock this morning, and certainly Chriselda doing a sterling job, but not being the analyst that we need this morning, and we're grateful for that. All right.